In 1860, a new nation was born in fire, but as the Italian state rose to power, it realized it couldn't rule Sicily without making a deal with the shadows. For over a century, this unholy alliance built cities, rigged elections, and executed anyone who dared to speak the truth. This is the 150-year secret history of the Mafia, the state, and the two men who died trying to tear them apart. The Mafia and the State, a secret history of 150 years of betrayal. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Honored Society, 1860-1874. The history of the Mafia and the modern Italian state begin together. Soon after Garibaldi and the troops from the northern region of Piedmont invaded Sicily in 1860 and united it with the rest of the new Italian nation, they encountered the problem of rampant crime. In the chaos of unification, bandits terrorized the countryside while criminal bands seized control of land resources. The northern Italians were struck by the Sicilians' refusal to cooperate with the new government, a stubborn silence, and a tendency to take justice into their own hands. The word mafia entered the vocabulary at this time to describe this tenacious organized crime deeply embedded in Sicilian life. Unlike common thieves, mafiosi held regular jobs, often serving as armed guards or intermediaries for absentee landlords, usurping the functions of an ineffective state. Chapter 2. The Pattern of Compromise, 1874-1924. In 1874, crime in Sicily reached epidemic proportions, sparking a national debate that eventually brought down the conservative government. Public order was restored through a typically Italian compromise. The Mafia helped police arrest blatant bandits, and in exchange, the government allowed the Mafia to continue its subtle economic crimes. This ability to co-opt public authority guaranteed Mafia impunity for over 130 years. As voting rights expanded, Mafia groups acquired political influence by controlling blocks of votes. Even in the late 19th century, observers like Leopoldo Franchetti warned that the Italian government was sacrificing the rule of law for political expediency, negotiating with the very powers they should have destroyed. Chapter 3. The Fascist Crackdown, 1924-1943. Mussolini's fascist regime made the first serious attempt to suppress the Mafia. Between 1924 and 1929, Cesare Mori, the Iron Prefect, conducted a brutal campaign of mass arrests and sieges. While homicides dropped significantly, Mori's illegal tactics turned mafiosi into perceived victims and failed to address the social roots of the organization. The fascists essentially replaced the mafiosi as the new enforcers for the landowning class. After Mori was recalled in 1929, the regime pretended the Mafia no longer existed, allowing the organization to slowly rebuild in the shadows. Chapter 4. War, Liberation, and the Cold War, 1943 and 1955. With the fall of fascism and the Allied invasion of Sicily, the Mafia emerged in full force. While the legend of Lucky Luciano preparing the landing is largely debunked, the Allied occupation undeniably provided new oxygen. Anxious to exclude communists, the Anglo-American administration installed several prominent mafiosi as mayors. In the post-war order, the Mafia initially backed Sicilian separatism but soon shifted allegiance to the Christian Democratic DC Party as a bulwark against communism. This alliance was cemented in blood. Between 1945 and 1955, 43 left-wing activists were murdered. The most infamous event was the 1947 Portella della Ginestra massacre, where Salvatore Giuliano's band fired on celebrating farmers. This pact with the strong men was justified by politicians in the name of the Cold War. Chapter 5. The Sack of Palermo, 1955-1978. In the 1950s, land reform and urbanization moved the Mafia's focus from the countryside to the city. This era saw the Sack of Palermo, a massive building boom characterized by corruption and the destruction of historic sites. Developers with Mafia ties, supported by politicians like Salvatore Lima and Vito Ciancimino, transformed the city into an unsightly forest of cement, while the historic center was left to rot. During this period, the Mafia became an economic force. Deeply integrated into the Christian Democratic Party, high-ranking judges and politicians openly praised or associated with Mafia bosses, and being a friend of a mafioso was considered a sign of power rather than shame. Chapter 6. Two Sons of La Calza. Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino grew up just blocks apart in the old Palermo neighborhood of La Calza. Both came from the professional middle class and were raised with a strong sense of civic duty and patriotism. Despite different political leanings, Falcone toward the left and Borsellino toward the neo-fascist right, both were attracted to the only forces that seemed uncompromising toward the Mafia. Both entered the magistracy and eventually returned to Palermo, bringing a deep, first-hand understanding of the odor of Mafia they had breathed since childhood. Chapter 7, The Rise of the Corleonesi, 1978 to 1980. By the late 1970s, a pax mafiosa seemed to reign, but internal rumblings suggested a shift. Giuseppe Di Cristina, a moderate boss, warned police of a violent new threat. The Corleonesi, led by Salvatore Toto, Riina, and Bernardo Provenzano. These beasts preferred confrontation over conciliation. The Corleonesi began the season of excellent cadavers, assassinating high-profile figures who stood in their way. Police Chief Boris Giuliano, Magistrate Cesare Terranova, and Regional President Piersanti Mattarella. In 1980, after the murder of Judge Gaetano Costa, the massive Spatola Inzerillo heroin case landed on the desk of Giovanni Falcone, marking the beginning of his major anti-mafia work. Chapter 8, Martyrdom and Legacy, 1992-present. The struggle reached its tragic climax in 1992. In May, Giovanni Falcone was killed by a massive bomb near the Palermo airport. Less than 2 months later, Paolo Borsellino was killed by a car bomb in the Via d'Amelio. These assassinations, sanctioned by Toto Riina, shocked the nation. Riina was eventually captured and sentenced to life in prison. Today, the memories of the two prosecutors are honored at the Falcone-Borsellino airport, standing as symbols of the state's long and painful battle against the organization that grew up alongside it.